Shane Smith's final start of the season was dominant. It was another reason why he was this season's biggest surprise and best pitcher.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, the White Sox season is over, and it ended with Sean Smith finishing his surprise season strong. So let's discuss why I consider him the team's best pitcher and the biggest surprise of the season. Then Michael A. Taylor called it a career yesterday, and I want to discuss if the team needs to grab another veteran outfielder like him in the offseason. Then let's wrap up with the final minor league Monday report of the season. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine flavor an upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, so the White Sox got back to baseball's factory standards for wins with 60 on the season. And you can thank Shane Smith for pitching a gem yesterday to end the season just like he started it, strong. But then again, he pitched a lot of gems outside of when he tired out in June and July. And that IL stint allowed him to regain his stamina, and he finished off his All-Star rookie season in strong fashion. Outside of just one bad start in September, he was outstanding during the second half of the season. And I was hemming and hawing over thinking, well, maybe even though he, because Mike Vasil was consistent pretty much throughout the entire season, consistently consistently good. I was thinking, is he actually the biggest surprise and the team's best pitcher? Because also he was given up on by two franchises. The Mets didn't protect him in the Rule 5 draft. The Rays waived him after spring training. And I was also thinking, is Shane Smith the team's biggest surprise considering Colson Montgomery blasted 21 home runs in 71 games? I mean, that was, I think I saw a 48 homer pace had he played the entire season. But then I watched Smith throw 6 innings of one-hit ball, along with carrying a perfect game through 5 1/3 innings, and it clinched it for me. Smith was the team's best pitcher this season and the biggest surprise for the White Sox, and in a good way. Because remember, this year, obviously, you're finishing at 60 and 102, but the vibes are good. The arrow is pointing up. And where in 2023, where it's pretty much the same record, or similar, the arrow was pointed well down. And then last year was just an absolute dumpster fire where there were no real pleasant surprises outside of Garrett Crochet. And you traded him. You trade away Garrett Crochet. And another nominee for surprise was actually leveraging one of your best pitching assets to actually get a trade that looks like it's been mutually beneficial again. And this trade looks like it's not going to go the way of Chris Sale trade where, it's going to potentially blow up because Kyle Teal has already shown he can reach his floor, which is a very solid everyday baseball player. Now you're looking for him to be an all-star catcher. Chase Mydroth should at least be a everyday utility man. Or not every day. I mean, I know that's contradiction, but he could be an everyday solution at second base. At the very least, he's your utility infielder for the next 6 years on the cheap. And Wickham and Gonzalez potentially could be a very good reliever. And Braden Montgomery might be the face of your franchise. So that could be a surprise, but you just think that Smith was only just given an opportunity to compete for a starting job in spring training because the expectations were so low when they brought him in. Yes, I know he was the number 1 pick in the Rule 5 draft, but I remember doing shows where, you're just hoping to stash him in a low leverage, long relief role. And he goes out and just dominates in April and May. Becomes an all-star. I mean, think about this. Outside of one awful first start in spring training, he earned his rotation spot. And it wasn't because of the injuries. He legitimately earned it. And then in April, posts a 2.23 ERA and has a good May as well. But then obviously our fears were realized. Could he hold up? Because he only threw, 94 and 2/3 innings, the most ever for the Brewers the year before in their minor league system. Would he tire out? And yeah, he tired out on June 10th. After that start. Because he had a, gave up 1 run, 7 hits to Houston on June 10th, and then just had a terrible rest of the, June and July. But he has a 2.67 ERA in August and a 3.81 ERA in September. And that's going to be his final ERA of the season too, 3.81. Did have a 4.10 FIP in 146 1/3 innings. But he did beat his Fangraphs Zips projection of 78 1/3 innings. Although, again, and look at that. He was projected, for example, Zips projected him to be in a swing role. Projected 13 starts out of the 32 appearances he would have made. And he was projected to have a 4.69 ERA with a 4.54 FIP and a 0.6 FWAR. And Smith goes out and leads the pitching staff in FWAR with 2.2. And Colson Montgomery's hot weekend is the only reason why he finished ahead of Smith in FWAR. And think about how devastating Smith's stuff was on opposing hitters, because the stuff is why I'm just so excited about what Shane Smith can do in his career with the White Sox. Per Baseball Savant, a .198 batting average against his fastball, a 200 average against his changeup, a 222 average against his sinker. Now, where he can take the next step toward being a certified ace is really mastering that curveball. And that was his third most used pitch. But opponents hit 267 with a 550 slug against it. And I said ace, keyword ace, because I've definitely certified him as a stud pitcher. He's a stud in terms of his stuff. You just watch it. He was a pitching ninja regular, but did run out of gas. And that kind of kept him from the ace status. I think he has the stuff to get there. And I think that's the next bar he has to clear. And it's going to come down to his stamina. Can he now get to 175 innings? And I think that, just remember, the days of 200 innings are pretty much going to be gone. And it's not because, pitchers just their arms can't handle it. In a lot of ways, it's the metrics looking at it and saying, usually when you go through the third time in the order, you're going to get hit. The old adage, first at bat, you're watching it, the pitches. Second at bat, you're getting the timing. Third at bat, you're trying to do damage. Well, just take out that trying to do damage. Just give them 2 and then go to the bullpen. Speaking of the bullpen, I loved Vasil's season in being the Swiss Army knife out of the pen. But his bar to clear is, can he be effective outside of living off of defense and some luck? Because he did have a 2.50 ERA, but a 4.32 FIP. And that gap shows he got some help. Although, again, that's not a terrible thing, but it can potentially lead to sustainability issues. So I'm confident, because I think, again, he has the stuff to get there. And I did see on social media, though, someone asking, who's the biggest surprise, Colson or Shane? And again, I think it's Shane, because the expectations were so low coming into the season. Colson did a great job of bouncing back from his injury-riddled, terrible spring training and that awful start to his AAA season. But he was a first-round pick in the real draft, not the Rule 5, not the one where teams give up on you. Although the Brewers maybe gave up on him because they just had so much depth. Think about it. They won 97 games with a ton of injuries. But given the pedigree, I go with Smith, since the hope was, he does well enough to just stay on the roster the entire season. Well, Michael A. Taylor called it a career. He wraps up a 12-year career where it all started in Washington. Let's discuss, though, if the White Sox should entertain bringing in another veteran outfielder in the offseason like they did with Taylor, and that is after the break. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy Shots delivers tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot, and you can take it anywhere and get the boost when you need it. And you can just crack open a 5-hour energy when you need that boost. No need to wait around for that coffee to finish being made. And I know I need to cut down on my coffee and pop intake, so you best believe I'm using 5-hour energy to get me going. I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. And this episode is brought to you by Zippix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for a nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. And as I've been saying, I need to cut down on my coffee and pop intake. So I've been using the toothpicks for that energy boost I need during the day. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com. Use code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. Must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's zippixtoothpicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix toothpicks. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball, venting with me, and maybe some hope. All right, Michael E. Taylor announced before yesterday's game that he was done after the game's conclusion. He's calling it a career, hanging up the cleats. And manager Will Venable, I think he pulled a class move by pulling Taylor with 1 out in the 9th so he could get that curtain call from the Washington Nationals fan base where Taylor started his stellar defensive career there. You know, he was never really known for his bat, although he did have a 21 homer season for the Twins in 2023 and 806 OPS in 118 games in 2017. But the defense was his calling card. He won a Gold Glove in his career, and he emerged as a clubhouse leader, mostly in the example type for the White Sox this season. You know, he was brought in probably for the intangibles. I know he was sort of brought in as kind of a safety net in case they did trade Luis Robert Jr. in the offseason or at the trade deadline. But since that didn't happen, he was more brought in to be that late inning defensive replacement for, you know, Andrew Benintendi. He was brought in to basically lead by example. And manager Will Venable said that Taylor helped establish the culture in the clubhouse that he wants. And it got me thinking, should the White Sox actually try to bring in another veteran outfielder in the offseason like they did with Taylor past offseason? And I'm going to say this, it depends on the player and the budget, because honestly, I love what Taylor did, but if the budget is limited again in the offseason, which I pretty much think it's going to be, I'd rather give that $1.95 million, to say a reliever. I would really want the bullpen to be upgraded next year, because while I enjoyed Taylor being able to catch fly balls to help these young players learn how to win, they lost a lot of games because, again, the bullpen was just so bad in high leverage situations. But I do think Taylor provided the value the club was looking for, as he played solid defense in the outfield. He especially helped out when Luis Robert Jr. was missing time, although Taylor did have a rough defensive series against the Yankees, last week. But, now knowing that he was going to retire, you kind of see why he made some business decisions. And it's a lost season, guys, okay? Not going to go crush them for not laying out, so the White Sox could win 61 games. And we don't even know if they win 61 games if he lays out and makes that diving catch on the Yankees walk-off hit. Also, Brandon Eisert, if he doesn't sail, potentially getting strike 3, you're not even in that situation. But here's what Venable said about Taylor's clubhouse impact this season. Quote, he was amazing. He was just a quiet leader, but made a big impact on the entire group more than anybody. He made me better. He made the players better. He elevated everything that we did, from the way we communicated our meetings. He was the one that really took charge in helping us define our non-negotiables and helped to hold our guys accountable. He really developed the fabric of our culture here, end quote. And that is from Scott Merkin, the MLB.com White Sox beat reporter. And again, you see him helping the White Sox change the culture. And do you bring in another veteran? Because again, this team's still going to be very young next season. Colson Montgomery's only played 71 career games. Chase Mydroth has played, I think 124, 123. Enough for me to make sure that I didn't lose a bet to Bez from OnTapSportsNet.com. Kyle Teal, Edgar Caro. They still haven't played a full season. You're going to have a lot of young guys. So it can't hurt, again, to bring in another veteran utility outfielder. And I know this is the sexy stuff. I know we want to be talking about, hey, can Jerry, you open up your wallet, get Kyle Schwarber, get Pete Alonso. But you still need these guys too. These guys like Michael A. Taylor, especially in these rebuilds, to kind of help. But on the same point, I get the argument of, well, didn't Taylor get in the way towards the end of Brooks Baldwin, for example, being out in center field last Wednesday instead of Michael A. Taylor? And because again, if you're trading Luis Robert Jr. before the deadline, if he does have a decent first half and stays healthy, Brooks Baldwin is your center fielder. And, he's got sneaky pop in his bat, and he's got the athleticism to run in the outfield, but he's also, as you've seen, very inexperienced there. And you're also probably going to need someone to split time with Mike Tauchman and Andrew Benintendi in the corner spots, especially if Mike Tauchman's legs continue to go. But if the budget is limited yet again, and I talked about it, I think, on Thursday, that they should have some money to spend, but let's say they do go out and get two $10 million starting pitchers, because they're going to need at least potentially 3 starting pitchers, depending on how Sean Burke does in spring training. And he did okay being spotted in an opener on Saturday. Not great, okay. And you got to see what type of offseason. I mean, and again, if you can upgrade anywhere, upgrade. And you just need 1-year deal guys. So let's say that eats away at the limited money Chris Getz has to spend. Well, $1.95 million might be better spent on another bullpen arm on a 1-year deal, with the hope of getting some high leverage outs. And remember, I could see somebody right now saying, who are you going to get at $1.95 million to get some high leverage outs? Remember, bullpen arms are volatile. Sometimes you're signing the whole story, or you are signing, knowing that, hey, maybe this guy is in the valley, but there's a chance he could hit a peak again, that type of stuff. And you do have Dominic Fletcher, Corey Julks, and Will Robertson on the cheap in your organization, at least right now, that can play capable defense in the outfield. And you can have Will Robertson be coming off the bench, see if he can still be a power option off the bench. Because again, the guy looks like a bodybuilder, but he's an example of how baseball is so hard. And I think that's why it comes down to costs, which, and I've had guests on. And I know you guys are wanting a bigger budget, but I don't know if you're going to get that bigger budget. And for example, I mean, I'm not going to be against if they circle back to Austin Slater to bring him back to hit lefties and implement, actually the true platoon the team wanted in right this season. I think they were envisioning, but then, Slater gets hurt and Tauchman actually does well hitting lefties. But again, how many games is Tauchman going to play? And that stuff is all going to factor in. So I think it just comes down to how much money you got left over in the budget, and did you accurately take care? Did you adequately take care of the bullpen? Well, the White Sox do have a championship team in the organization. AA Birmingham won the Southern League title for the 2nd straight season. But the best part of that title, 2 promising pitchers were outstanding during that championship run and during the championship playoffs. And I want to discuss that on the final Minor League Monday report, and that is after the break. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There's so many products out there and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. And that's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And now Nutrafol is the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. And you can feel great about what you're putting into your body, since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF certified contents, and the gold standard in third-party certification for supplements. And I got my hair issues with a big old bald spot, so I can't wait to give Nutrafol a try, because again, I can feel good about knowing Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com. It's spelled Nutrafol.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show's available on all major podcast platforms. Hope you had a good weekend. Mine involved a lot of road trips to Rockton, Illinois. We made the decision to get a puppy. Again, I really appreciate the condolences for last week after having to put down my dog, Bogey, for 12 years. My wife and I discussed it, because my daughter was like, well, I would, and she's an only child and she would really like to have a dog. She really liked having a dog. So we made the decision, but the, place that we found was in Rockton, Illinois for the dog that we wanted, a mini Australian Labradoodle, and drove out there. And it was, we got there and they're like, well, Illinois state law says we can't turn over until the next day for age purposes. So I had to drive again. The backstory on that is I finally found Hononegah High School. And the reason that is such an important thing was I remember Johnsburg played Hononegah my senior year of high school in the basketball playoffs. And a lot of my good friends were on the basketball team. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go. But this was pre-MapQuest days. So my buddy and I, we get in the car and my dad gives me these directions that, honest to gosh, we didn't even make it out of McHenry County. He just could not. We would have been better off using a road map the old school way. But my dad was like, oh, no, you take this road. And it was like, what? We got lost. I think the farthest we made it was Chemung. But 26 years later, I finally found Hononegah High School. And I guess the game is over, obviously. Well, the White Sox AA affiliate won a championship in the weirdest way possible. The deciding Game 3 on Wednesday had a weather delay that pushed it into Thursday. And the Barons still won despite having to sleep on a lead. I mean, think about that. Like, game, I think it was it rained out in the 6th or 7th inning. So you got to wait a full another day. And the Barons were on the road. This was in Montgomery. But it makes back-to-back titles for the Barons. And what does it mean for the organization, honestly? And I've seen some, you guys commenting like, oh, the championship AA team. It's a nice intangible to have prospects that expect to win, but some of these guys, are never going to make it to the show. They're just not. I mean, it's the next level up. Obviously, it's important in some ways because AA is where you now start to get to. These are the guys that have a shot to make it to the big leagues, but some of these guys still won't make it. Or some of these guys are just going to be cup of coffee players, or some of these guys you're going to use in trades. They're not even going to be in your organization. That is why development always matters more than winning in the minors. So, like last year when I heard about, Chris Getz saying, oh, well, we're competing for championships in the minors. Well, I don't care. Some of those guys aren't ever going to help you compete for a championship at the big league level. Now, two things can be true at the same time. If you do make it to the playoffs, it's added games to help develop, and seeing Tanner McDougal dominate in his outing in Game 2 and Hagen Smith shine through the first 4 innings in Game 3, that was a nice development point. You can get development points if you make it to the playoffs. So there's some added bonus in there. I mean, think about it. The White Sox got to play, 6 more games? Those AA prospects, got to play. That's fine. So that's why two things can be true. You can get some value in getting some more live reps, more at-bats for Sam Antonacci and William Bergolla, which I'll talk about. But seeing Hagen finish an inconsistent season strong is also kind of a nice assurance that he still has the promise to be that frontline starter when the White Sox are ready to compete for championships. Remember at one point, and I talked about it, I think it was in August, that pick was looking like terrible process. Connor Griffin is the number 1 prospect in baseball per MLB pipeline. JJ Weatherholt is the number 6 prospect. Again, guys that the White Sox were tied to. Jack Caglione has already made it to the big leagues. So it's like, here's Smith having to be pulled from game action because of a sore, his elbow tiring out and inconsistency. And then he comes back and he's throwing, balls left and right and hard, hard for him to, throw strikes. But, he turns it around. But it was McDougal who dominated over 4 innings in Game 2 against Montgomery, the Rays affiliate. 6 Ks, and that helped the Barons get back into the series after going down 1-0 on Sunday in Birmingham last Sunday. The team's number 7 prospect, though, was on an innings limit over the second half of the season. So it was actually nice to see the organization let him go 1 more inning because normally he was just pitching 3 innings. And this is the fireballer I want to see develop to a ceiling. Because as I've talked about earlier in the show, you're probably going to need 3 starters to be added to the core of the rotation. I'm not totally out on Sean Burke, but it's starting to get a little late early for him. He's got to figure out the command and work on his command in the offseason and come into spring training strong. But that being said, you still need 2 spots. Noah Schultz up and down, Hagen Smith up and down. So you like to have options. And again, I think Tanner McDougal should be developed as a starter right now. I give them credit for doing that because his arm, unlike Grant Taylor's arm, was starting to give indication. Oops, we don't know if this can hold up. We don't know if his arm can hold up over a starter's workload. Hagen, Tanner McDougal's has Tommy John surgery after getting drafted in 2021, and then his innings workload. He's showing that his arm can handle it. His innings workload has gone from 69 in 2022. 69 and a third, in 2023. I've got my notes wrong there. Had the surgery in 2022 to 92 and a third in 2024 to 113 and a third in the regular season this year, plus a few more postseason innings. I also liked how he went from 80 Ks in 2023 to 116 in 2024 to 136 this season, including 63 at AA. I doubt he's going to crack the opening day roster, but it wouldn't shock me if he's in the rotation at some point in 2026. I just don't want to see him be brought up in a reliever role. Let's develop him to his ceiling. If he can't handle it, then let's develop him to his floor, which is a reliever. Now, Smith cruised through the first 4 innings of Game 3, but then ran into trouble with his command. Did strike out 6 in his outing, but he walked 2 to start the 5th, and that ended up being a total of 5 walks, and he gave up an RBI when he was pulled. Smith will head to Arizona Fall League to get some more work in, and I think that's going to be very valuable to him. I just want to see him work on the command. He's going to get hit in the Arizona Fall League. Every pitcher gets hit in the Arizona Fall League. It's a hitter's dream. What you want to see is, can he command? Can he cut down on the walks? And I think with those command issues, he's probably going to likely start the year either at AA or maybe even AAA. But again, just let's see if he can keep the walks down in the Arizona Fall League. Sam Antonacci and William Bergolla also took advantage of the extra at-bats. The team's number 11 and 12 prospects per MLB pipeline combined to go 5 for 8 with 2 runs in Game 3. And again, I like the potential of those two being the bat-to-ball guys the desired White Sox lineup needs to be mixed in with power bats. As I've always said, give me a lineup with at least 5 power hitters, 3 bat-to-ball on-base guys, and whatever you can get out of the catcher. If you get the power, then you got 6. If you get a bat-to-ball catcher, you get 4. You need those guys because those are always been your ideal lineups because right field plays the power. And William Bergolla is not going to provide any pop at all. So I also wonder if it makes sense moving him to the outfield, especially since he can run really well, because it's getting crowded up the middle for the White Sox system. So it's got to be worth exploring, moving guys around. Antonacci still technically has a path in the infield, whether it's at third base. If Curtis Meade doesn't work out, you can move Vargas there full time. You can also play Antonacci at second if, Chase Mydroth is nothing more than a utility player, that type of stuff. So it's just, these are some things that they do need to explore, I think, in the offseason and test out in the minor leagues. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with a discussion with Kyle Williams of the Chicago Sun-Times. He was the White Sox beat reporter for most of the season. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion on the episode page on YouTube. You can also email me, lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com, or you can leave them at X, formerly Twitter, at LockedOnSox or at TajJDub. Also, make sure to like today's episode on YouTube and leave a 5-star review at wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.